Hi, folks. Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the Roe versus Wade decision today, or yesterday, I guess now, by the Supreme Court of the United States. I've done a couple of vids on this in the past, so I'm going to reiterate just a few of the points I've made. I'm, as you probably guessed, not an American citizen, so I don't really have a horse in this race. Moreover, I take a more practical rather than theological approach to abortion and understand the practicalities that apply in certain situations, or lack of them, the case may be. So I don't have a blanket 100% view one way or another. It's probably more, I guess, towards the centre. I imagine probably a lot of people are, but nonetheless, just going back to the original Roe decision, it was, in terms of constitutional law, it was something of an aberration. My perception is that it was an activist decision by the then court at a time when, there was a lot of street activism, Vietnam War, black rights activism in the South, all this sort of stuff, and I think the perception was that this may have been a good activist, as in societal activism type decision, rather than a good legal decision. In terms of a legal decision, and certainly in terms of constitutional observance, it was a very bad decision, or in my view, and many I think would take that position. Was it good for the activists that were pushing it and waving it around? Well, they probably thought it was. They probably saw it as some sort of great social victory. And again, many of the frontline activists were Jewish lesbians in this abortion activism sort of arena. So you need to put that in perspective. And even the ones that weren't Jewish lesbians were lesbians. So lesbians were far and away the majority of people, women pushing for this decision. Now, there were two things, or a few things, that are concerning. One is that with the Supreme Court decision, it took it out of the hands of the legislators to a large extent. And all this decision today does is return the decision on abortion to the legislators, which is where it should be. If the legislators had made decisions that had contradicted constitutional law, then that would be a matter for the Supreme Court. So I'm intrigued that the Supreme Court back in the day even agreed to hear this case, let alone decide so heavily in favour of it. Now, the other thing is, if you look at the documents that were lodged for the Roe decision, they look like they were written up by a first-year, not very bright law student. It's sloppy work. There is no compelling argument that I can see where any arguments are put forward. They're not put forward well, and they're drawing a very long bow. So given such amateurish and sloppy work, I'm surprised that the court agreed to even hear it. That in itself implies and suggests, if not confirms, the activism that the court was applying to this matter generally. But they decided in favour of it based on the sloppy paperwork. Then that equally is an issue, in my view. Cases that poorly argued, and this was back in the day 50 years ago, is very poorly argued and really had no justifying points of law that I can see. So it seems like the court had pre-agreed. It was a decision made in a backroom. Hey, you bring this to the court, we'll agree to hear it, and we'll decide in favour of it. No questions asked, thanks. And then that's what they did. So I think it's a pre-arranged, pre-agreed, and thus an outrageous corruption of the independence of the Supreme Court of the United States, going back 50 years ago. So So, coming now to the abortion issue itself, quite a few activists on the anti-abortion side have made arguments along the lines of, well, how do we know that the aborted fetuses weren't going to turn into people that found the cure for cancer, or designed the next rocket to go to the next solar system, or we're going to be great scientists, or whatever. That there was supposedly great people among them. Now there may have been, I suppose, on just a balance of probability averages, given the many tens of millions of abortions that have occurred since then, some which would have occurred anyway because the states would have allowed it. So the idea that every single abortion that occurred was one that would not have occurred, that in itself is a deeply flawed argument. Many of them still would have occurred because the states would have made those decisions. In fact, if you look at the states today that legalise or have legal abortion, even up to reasonably late terms, you're probably looking at actually, I did a breakdown a week or so ago and haven't got it in front of me, but say 25, 26 states, something like that, will have legalized abortion up until 20 or 26 weeks, that sort of thing. And others will have either no abortion or abortion under certain conditions, such as whether it's threatening the life of the mother, or if the fetus is badly deformed, things like that, or up to 13 weeks pregnancy term. So I don't think there's a single state, or not that I'm aware of, that has a blanket, total, absolute a ban on abortion under any and all circumstances. That simply isn't going to exist. So the idea that some terrible blow to feminism or something is absolute bullshit, total bullshit. Abortions can be got still widely in the United States, including, by the way, in the most populous states such as New York State and California. So, and even Texas, abortion will still be there up until I think it's 16 weeks or thereabouts. So this idea that abortion is unavailable is nonsense. And even in the states where abortion is reasonably restricted, then there's at least one, if not two, states directly adjoining those states where abortion is fully legal up until a reasonably late term in the pregnancy. So, and activist organisations will happily pay, as they do to bring illegal aliens into the West, will happily pay people to give them a Greyhound bus ticket to go and get the job done and return. So there's not a single person, not a single woman who wants it, who will be deprived it in the United States. So we can just take that argument off the table straight away. That it's enshrined in non-negotiable law, that's a different matter. It's now a matter for the legislators to decide, as it should be. The representatives of the people make this decision. The elected representatives. That's how it's supposed to work and how it should work. Now that means that the activists, the radical activists, don't get what they want all the time, but that's how it works for all of us. And I think if you sit down and consider it, you'd rather have it that way than something that's imposed, because any system that can impose this or that law on the people can impose laws that you don't like as well. And one day maybe they'll impose a law saying all journalists are Nazi, fascist, activist people who have to be taken out back and shot. I mean, do you want that? So don't think that the legislature, that these legislate from the judicial bench, that don't assume that it's always going to be decisions in your favour. It won't be. And that's something that people need to take on board. Coming now to the matter of abortions. Now the numbers vary. I was digging around the internet for a while, and in terms of the number of abortions that occur, in terms of gross numbers and racial proportions, and this is important, something in the region of a little bit over half, or approximately half, of all abortions are black people, or black women rather, having abortions. So that's unusually high. Approximately a quarter. Again, the numbers there's a bit of rubber in the numbers here. Approximately a quarter are Hispanics. and then other non-white people. So we've got, I mean, about 80%, say, or again, depending on numbers, between say 72 and 81%. Maybe that's the range, given the variety of numbers that I saw, are non-white. So just on say a fifth are white people getting abortions. Now, this seems rather odd because black people make up, so I think 12.5% of the United States population, yet they represent nearly half of the abortions. That seems quite astonishing. Again, even the Latins are heavily overrepresented in the abortions, and the whites are by proportion heavily underrepresented. So if we accept that approximately 2/3 of the population are white, and yet only 1/5 of the, so 60, say 65% of the population are white. I think it's a bit less than that, really, but say 65%, but only 19 or 20% of the abortions are white abortions. So, but let's do a bit of a deeper dive into these numbers, and this will start to, I think, reveal where, in the eyes of some, and particularly if you adopt the middle ground here, that abortion has its place in any advanced society now, under certain conditions. Now, why are the black abortions so incredibly high? There's certainly some may say a very casual attitude to copulation amongst the inner city population, low IQ sort of area of the population. It's not unusual for a 26-year-old black woman to have 5 children by 5 different guys, none of whom she knows. So this is a fact of life. Now you can do some heavyweight social engineering if you want to try and change the attitudes of those people, those black people who live those sort of lives, but that would be viewed as fascism. So that's hands off. So what can you do? Now, a lot of these abortions are from 11, 12, 13-year-old girls, black girls. So do you want 12-year-old girls and in the tens of thousands each year having children? Is that something you want? Is it desirable for any society to have that? Is it evil and wicked to abort fetuses that are in the 12-year-old girls are carrying? Is it good or bad to do it? Is there a theological or a practical attitude to it? Is it simply a legal matter? Is it simply a practical matter? Now, I'm not pretending to have the answers there, by the way, but I do know that having tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands at times, girls that young procreating is not a good thing for any society. That I can guarantee you. How it's managed after the event, assuming that it's every fetus must go to full term, then I don't know how many 12-year-old girls you want having children to look after. The state intervention there would have to be massive. Would not that intervention thus be fascism? Certainly by today's insane standards, it would be. To allow it to happen, would that be fascism, or would that be a caring society, and so on? So these are definite questions for any society to ask itself. So when we look at the abortions occurring, or the number of them and where they're occurring, they're overwhelmingly black or non-white, black and brown, and in inner city, impoverished, low IQ inner city areas, where standards that we would consider minimal and basic for human existence don't exist. There are people that live minute by minute, day by day, many of them low IQ, many of them with no future at all. They exist in gangster-ridden environments that are certainly unpleasant, where crime of every description is off the charts, and where gangs have shootouts in the street, and where life expectancy is maybe 40 for a lot of these people. So this is the reality of where, had those fetuses gone to full term, that's where they would have been born, and they've been born to again, girls as young as 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on, in those environments. So the very idea that the person who's going to find the next cure for cancer or rocket scientist genius is coming from that's very, very unlikely indeed. So let's concentrate on, say, the white abortions. Now, again, an overwhelming proportion of those is to underage girls and to say drug addicted people living in government housing, people who are intellectually retarded and these sort of things. There are some lifestyle abortions, and let's just be generous and say 1 in 10 of abortions to white people, and say career women or women who don't want to have a child. It's inconvenient time. Maybe they're at college, they're in the middle of studies, maybe they're trying to get ahead in the company, and they believe that they must dedicate themselves fully and absolutely to pursuit of career objectives and goals. Then so in that situation, that motivated career, they've got money, that sort of thing, that may be the 1 in 10 there, that could possibly be the next rocket scientist genius. Again, on balance of probability, the chances are probably 1 in every 10,000 of those births would produce someone like that, if even that. So the likelihood there is indeed slim. So I completely reject this argument that amongst all those aborted fetuses would be the next rocket scientist, the next cure for cancer, or the next Beethoven or something like that. That's bullshit. It's a good catchy line to throw around, but it's bullshit. Now, on the other side of it, how many, and this is an important one that people don't think about, how many women would have got pregnant, especially younger women, a college kid party or something like that. They're all smoking dope, getting drunk. It's group sex, this sort of thing, and she gets pregnant, and then 10 years later comes back to say, no, I want child support for those 10 years. She takes the money from the guy to get the abortion, but doesn't get the abortion, and she's going to drop out of college anyway, so who cares? The parents say, well, don't worry, move in with us, but maybe mum and dad die, or the folks, fall on stony times, and she's got to apply for a government benefit, and that triggers a whole range of things. Or alternatively, that it could be a woman, say 30, who gets pregnant, and she decides, no, I want to keep it, and the guy realizes he's looking at 25. It's an accident. Nothing was planned. Nothing was agreed to. There was no relationship. He's looking forward to 25, 26 years of paying child support, plus meeting all sorts of other educational costs that'll get pushed on him. Now, I've sort of had guys, who've been in this is in the corporate world, been in my team who've say been top flight programmers or top flight financial analysts, and all these sort of people, and they've been making the big bucks. But when you make, particularly back in a few years ago, I'm thinking of one guy now. This is some years ago, but he was making his $250,000 a year, and he's quite good. He was a smart guy. He's the sort of guy that would have found, well, not the cure for cancer, but he was in that type of league. And bright guy, and hardworking, dedicated. Had a bright future, all this sort of thing. So goes to some party. She gets pregnant and decides to keep it, and he realizes that he's got again 25, 26 years of paying child support plus other costs. Now, he gets no say in the matter. If she decides to abort it, that's not his choice. If she decides to keep it, he's got no input in the matter. It's nothing to do with him, but he's required by the government to subsidised for 26 years a decision that was never his, and he was never involved in, that has nothing to do with him. Suddenly, based on her decision, he now has to live with 26 years of paying for it. Now, he at $250,000 a year, he's paying about $50 tax, give or take, in income tax and things like Social Security and so on. So he gets to he then has to pay around 20% of, say, 21% of his income in child support and sundry costs. So they're very creative and inventive in adding on. Because he's a high income guy too, they'll really go after him. I mean, no resource, no amount of money, no stone will be left unturned in pursuing him to make sure that he pays up. I mean, he's your classic. He's straight, he's white, he's on a good income, he's fucking Hitler, and they're going to get him. So he's now paying 71% of his income effectively in tax, whether it's income tax or a unwanted procreation tax. It doesn't matter. It's a fucking tax. So he's paying 71% there. So now he's looking at it and thinking, well, holy shit, I'm getting paid $250,000 a year, but I'm going to live the life of somebody who works on the checkout at Walmart. That by the time I've paid all this tax out, well, not much better than that. But I've got to work 70, 80-hour weeks and a lot of stress and pressure to live this very ordinary existence, financial existence. So why the fuck should I bust my ass? Now, this is a guy who could find the cure for cancer or be in that general space and things. But now he's got no motivation. If you go to any economist anywhere, and they'll say there's a point at which taxation works it becomes regressive. There's a point when you tax someone so much, it's just not worth their while putting themselves out. There's no point in it. Why would they? So because they're being taxed so high, they're left with so little money in their own pockets. They say, well, fuck, why should I bust my ass? Why should I go through this stressful existence at work, working with assholes and putting up with an asshole boss or something like that? Why should I go through all that when I can have a much less stressful existence and not paying? So if this guy is making this $250,000 a year, who's left with maybe say $75,000 after he's paid out all his taxes and so on, but he's got to work really hard for that. But so he decides, well, I'll drop down and I'll make, for example, $80,000 a year, and suddenly I'm only being taxed. I'm being taxed a lot less because the income tax amount drops. The percentage he's got to pay out to the child support and alimony, whatever it is, it also drops. So he's dropped from maybe $70,000 a year to $45,000 a year in his pocket, but he's only got to work a 35, 37-hour week, and his folks have got an apartment thing in their backyard, so he goes to live in there. He's not paying rent, so actually his standard of living increases. Now, no one else wins. The economy loses because a bright guy is now not doing as best that he can, and why should he, given the tax rate he's paying? And the government is collecting less tax revenue. The alimony and child support people are getting less money. So the woman was making so much money from the guy that she didn't even have to work. Now she has to work, which means the kid has to go into childcare. No one's winning out of this. It's a total loss to the economy. It's a loss to the society. It's a loss to business. Everyone is going to, so by forcing this guy to pay this sort of money without his input at any stage of the process. Now, that it so happens there are millions of guys across the Western world who are in this situation. And I've seen them up close. I've just seen how these people, their motivation, their perception they've got a bright future, their desire to do the best, be the most creative, just suddenly vaporizes. It just disappears overnight when they realize they're looking forward to, again, 25 plus years of paying out this money for a decision they never made, never agreed to, were never part of. So now in situations like that, where the guy says to the the woman again, who he may have only met on a one-night stand or something, says to her, well, look, I'll pay for everything, like the abortion, I'll pay for everything. And in some cases, they even say, well, look, you probably want to take a couple of weeks off. I'll pay you whatever your wage was as well to take the time off following the abortion. But the guy coughs a few $1,000s, for example, but that's the end of it. His life goes on, her life goes on. Nothing changes in terms of the equilibrium of the universe, if you will. He's still a hardworking guy. He's still maybe a bit more careful after that, though. He's still a hardworking guy who's going to find a cure for cancer, and he's motivated. He's going, and one day, you know, he'll in all probability he will start a family, and they'll be well looked after with someone on a high income who's really, you know, established some great cred for himself in a particular industry. So we need to look at things like that as well. So when we look at this total sort of story here, this total narrative, we need to consider those sort of things, that there are many millions of high capacity men in the Western world who are simply existing day to day and going through the motions because it's been inflicted on them without their agreement. Now, the reality is, if the guy doesn't agree, she can come and say, accidental one-night stand, I'm going to make you pay 25, or through the government, make you pay 25 years. No. That needs to be addressed as well. And if we're in the business of solving societal problems and issues, we can't get ideological or theological about it. We have to say what's practical and what works, and within the law and within the Constitution. And that's really the approach to take. So I think it's far more nuanced than just baby killer bad, you know, abortion good. It goes far, in my view, goes far beyond that. And hopefully I've mentioned some issues here that may broaden that discussion. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.